Hello, we're live. So welcome to our study replication presentation for the course 611. I'm Lauren and I'm in my third semester at Ball State University. I'm 28 years old and I now reside in California in the Napa Valley area. I just moved here from the Philadelphia suburbs of New Jersey, where I lived all my life. I began my career as an ABA therapist, working with children on the autism spectrum in both with their families and their school settings for a private agency. After several years of that, I began working for a major nonprofit organization as a behavior specialist for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in community-based group homes. When I was working in that position, I had the opportunity to complete FBAs and write behavior support plans for identified clients in need of behavior modification programs. And I found this assignment to be very interesting as I was able to apply the principles of behavior change to my own life with the hopes of making a positive difference in my daily routine.
Hello everyone, my name is Luel Nadella. This is my third semester at Ball State University. I am 23 years old. I currently reside in Seattle, Washington. Behavior technician at a clinic called MindSource Center. I work with kids diagnosed with ASD one-on-one, focusing on precision teaching, also known as fluency, where an existing skill is taken and increased in accuracy and speed of skill performance to develop. I work with these kids at home, in school, and as well as the clinic. From this study, I hope to have a good start engaging in physical activities, starting with walking. I hope to maintain a healthy weight and healthy lifestyle. I also hope to use this kind of intervention in other physical activities other than. We'll begin our presentation.
So the purpose of the study was to replicate the findings of the Normand 2008 Increasing Physical Activity Through Self-Monitoring, Goal Setting, and Feedback study, in which the effects of self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback on physical activity levels were measured in healthy adults. The Normand 2008 article states that 66% of adults in the US are overweight and 33% are obese. Supporting research prior to the Normand article suggested that modest changes in physical activity, such as walking an additional mile or somewhere between 2,000 to 2,500 steps per day, could be sufficient in preventing weight gain in healthy adults. Self-monitoring has proven to be an effective measurement and behavior change strategy in various other behavioral interventions seeking increased physical activity. This study was intended to measure the effects of the treatment package to include self-monitoring, feedback, such as praise, and goal setting on increasing daily step totals in adults using a pedometer to track steps. The research was used to evaluate whether a package intervention similar to that of the researcher Van Wormer in 2004 could increase daily step totals. The Normand 2008 study included 4 adult participants comprised of 3 males and 1 female. The participants utilized a new Lifestyles 2000 pedometer to track their steps each day. The results of the study indicated that goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback intervention package increased the number of steps recorded each day for 3 of the 4 participants. All participants reported that they believed the self-monitoring and feedback helped them to take more steps per day. So just to reiterate, I hope to improve my step count and walk more each day to maintain health and improve physical fitness. And Luel wanted to engage in physical activity starting with walking to reduce excess body fat and increase stamina in exercising. The methods used within this study include the participants, which are myself, a 28-year-old healthy female from New Jersey, and the other participant, Luelle, 23 years old, healthy female from Washington State. The setting of this particular study were the participants' local areas and any places traveled to on foot during the day. The data collection method used in this study was a permanent product recording system, which was used to record the number of steps taken each day via a Fitbit step counter. Daily and weekly step totals were manually recorded by each participant on the data collection sheet, which was a Google document. The step totals for each participant were also synced up to an app, which was accessed via smartphone or other internet device, and that was through the Fitbit app. The target behavior of this study is daily steps taken and is defined as any activity recorded and displayed via the Fitbit device and app counting as a step. The materials that were needed in this study included a step counter, which for us was a Fitbit, for automatically recording step totals, tape, daily internet access, a communication device, which for us was Google Hangouts to communicate with a partner, a data collection sheet for manually recording step totals, and a writing tool. This study design was an AB-AB reversal design that was set for both participants. Baseline data was recorded for a period of 7 days, followed by 7 days of intervention phase, then a return to baseline recording for another 7 days, and a return to intervention recording for the final 7 days of the study. During the baseline phases of this study, participants used a Fitbit device, which was worn on the wrist, with the screen converted with the screen covered to count how many steps were taken per day without looking at the screen. A picture of the sealed Fitbit devices were exchanged between the research partners, participants in the study, prior to the beginning of each baseline phase. Fitbits were worn by each participant for a period of at least 7 hours per day, and at the conclusion of the week, or the 7-day period, each participant screenshotted their 7-day step totals on their Fitbit apps and sent them to each other. Baseline totals and averages from the amount of steps taken for that week were recorded and shared on Google Documents. Once stable baseline was indicated for each participant, intervention phases began.
During the intervention phase of this study, the participants had stable baselines before starting their treatments. The first goal for the daily steps during treatment was established through calculating the average number of steps taken from daily baseline. New goals for daily steps were established by calculating the average number of steps taken from the previous week, meeting the goals at least 4 consecutive times within that week. At the end of the week, participants sent screenshots of the previous 7 days of step totals to research partners, verifying reported totals. Also, at the end of the week, participants met face-to-face on Google Hangout for updates on treatments. And delivered social praises and encouraging statements to the research partner. Up-to-date intervention data was logged on Google Docs for all participants to review. Here is an example of a Google document that we used to record our data. For inter-observer agreement, each participant reported daily activity by sending a message to the partner via Google Hangout. At the end of the week, each participant sent a screenshot of the total daily steps for the previous 7 days and calculated total average of daily steps for that week, and sent to the partner to calculate that week's total average and compare with the participant's self-report. The IOA percentages will be calculated by dividing the number of inter-observer agreement scores by the total inter-observer scores, agreements and disagreements, and multiplying by 100. The IOA for all participants in the study was 100%. For treatment integrity, during weekly meetings, participants discuss questions and clarifications to remain consistent on data recording and to reduce treatment drifts. All participants recorded daily steps and gave feedback during weekly meetings. All were consistent with recording and reporting. The number of days where participants did not report a daily step total during the intervention phase were divided by the total number of intervention days and then multiplied by 100. Days where participants did not receive feedback from their partner despite reporting their step totals were divided by the total number of intervention days and then multiplied by 100. The treatment integrity for our project was 100%. We will now be talking about our results.
So as you can see, the raw data for myself, I was able to record 7 days worth of stable baseline in the first phase, which began on Sunday, June 11th. After 7 days of stable baseline, we set the treatment goal and then recorded 7 days of stable intervention data in phase 2. That was where we introduced our intervention package of goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback. Then after 7 days of stable intervention data in phase 2, we returned to baseline and were able to record 7 days of stable baseline data in which the intervention package was no longer being implemented. And we ended with 5 days worth of data for our final intervention phase where the treatment package was reintroduced. And we'll talk towards the end of this presentation about why we only had 5 days for that second intervention phase. Okay, so here's a graph that depicts the trends for our baseline phases as well as our intervention phases. The results yielded for myself for the first baseline phase, the average steps taken for that week totaled 7,095. The range for that first baseline phase was between 5,251 and 8,310, equaling 2,308 steps. The average steps taken during the first intervention phase was 9,140 steps. So we saw an increase from baseline to our intervention. The range for that first intervention phase was between 7,073 and 10,789, equaling 3,716 steps. For the return to baseline, average steps taken saw a decrease down back to 6,000 steps and a range of 5,328 and 7,387, totaling 2,059 steps for the range. Then when we reintroduced the intervention again in our final phase, saw an increase in average steps back to 11,691 steps and a range between 9,918 and 14,387, equaling 469 steps for the range. The average steps taken per day increased during the self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback intervention phases. The intervention phase goals were met, and a decline in the number of steps taken was indicated during the return to baseline phase.
Here is a short recap of my raw data. As you can see, I've also recorded from June 11th to June 17th. My baseline average for that week was 4,288, with the range between 3,863 and 4,675. When the intervention phase began, I created my goal, received feedback from my partner, as well as self-monitored my steps. My treatment average for the week of June 18th to June 25th increased to 13,940 steps, with a range between 12,097 to 15,097. In the second baseline, the intervention was removed and the average was 5,572 steps, between the range 3,473 to 1,597 steps. When the intervention was reintroduced, the daily average steps increased to 7,353. And this is the graph that I came up with. What I did not mention was that during the intervention phase, which is very important to note, is that I traveled to a new environment, which was in New York, and toured around with the family, and transportation was mostly walking. The June 25th was the last day at the state where my family and I also walked the most out of the whole trip, since we went around the city from day to night. Highest daily steps recorded on the second baseline phase, as you can see on this graph. And the day after that was coming back to Washington, which explains the gradual drop on the second day for the second baseline. Also in this graph, you could see that the intervention was very helpful in increasing the daily steps taken. Although we had to walk most of the time in the city, the interventions did help in increasing my goal weekly and motivating myself to keep walking. The progressive results remained consistent when the intervention was delivered again. There was an increase in total number of steps taken daily from the baseline when I was in New York City and when I went back to Seattle. So the change in the environment did not really matter, since from this results it shows that the data increased before and after the intervention was reintroduced. And this is just a short recap of what I just mentioned about my data. Okay. For the conclusion of this project, we thought that it was a successful replication of AB reversal design study. Self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback intervention phases yielded increased daily total number of steps. It increased physical activity compared to their respective baseline phases, and self-monitoring held participants more accountable for reaching their step goals. The feedback intervention using daily written feedback was helpful for both participants, along with graphic and vocal feedbacks. Goal setting was also very motivating for both participants. Progress is seen through weekly goals. Step goals were met for each of the participants. One of the limitations of this project was the change of environment. As I have mentioned earlier, I traveled to New York City, which was a change in environment from Seattle to New York, where walking was the main source of transportation, and during this treatment phase, and back to Washington during the second baseline phase.
And I traveled to the West Coast through long driving periods during the return to baseline phase, which I believe had a slight impact on the overall steps taken during that week. And then when the intervention phase was reintroduced, I did a significant amount of walking while visiting a national park during a couple of those days. So due to these factors, I would say it's difficult to attribute the increased step totals to just the goal setting, feedback, and self-monitoring intervention alone, as the relevant activities that I was engaged in did have an impact on the amount of steps that were taken during those respective phases. In addition, some limitations of the project included the limited time that we had to finish the entire second intervention phase. So our intention was to do 7 days of stable intervention phase for our final phase, but we could not complete the full 7 days of stable intervention due to the deadline to present this presentation. In addition, another limitation of this project was the generalization. We're a homogeneous sample, both female graduate students in our 20s. So we cannot generalize the results of this study to other groups of individuals.
Here is the reference for our study, and this is the original study that we replicated. And that is the end of our presentation. We hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you.